Well, a few of you have asked about us doing a wet out table to wet out the fiberglass before we actually put it on the boat. I haven't found that necessary at all to do that for just a standard double bias or the biaxial, just because of the fact that the way the porosity works so that you can wet out in place, and it works a lot better than that way. But now that we are switching over to doing our seams with our double bias with the chop strand mat, this is 1208 fiberglass. Now it makes sense to do a wet out table. And how we're setting that up is, this is just adhesive backed plastic. Is sold as carpet runners that you have when you put in a new house or something like that, and you have tradesmen coming in and out. Protects that surface. But the big thing with it is, A, it's adhesive backed, so it goes on and stays on. So when you're pulling up the fabric, it works really well, or the cloth. The other thing with it too is it is fairly stretchy, so it does not rip or tear at all. It's a very, very strong product, and it's cheap. So a 200-foot section was like $30 or something like that. So it's very inexpensive compared to some of the other plastics. And this is just rough measurements because it really doesn't matter. Just chop off any extra. And the reason that we switched to the fiberglass with the chop strand back is that for this section, basically, we are doing the seams where the hulls hold together, and it's kind of important to have that extra protection with it. What the chop strand does is it fills in kind of uneven surface, and it helps with adhesion, so it does stick a little bit better to the surface. Not as necessary with vinyl ester as it is with just regular polyester, but it is kind of something that we figured would work really well for this and for the undersides of the bulkheads. It does make it more difficult to fare because it is a thicker product, but in this area, or in these areas, you know, we're not going to see it at all. It's going to be hidden behind some extra structure, furniture, that kind of stuff, so we really don't see it. So it goes really, really well where we want that extra strength and extra adhesion.
After 8 years of the nomadic life, involving crossing oceans in a 34-foot Sabre, refitting an aluminum boat, and then taking that to the Arctic Circle, we're back at it again with a brand new build. This is Matt, and I'm Jessica. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and join us every week as we start our newest project of building a 42-foot catamaran from the ground up.
If you hear like a Freddy Krueger sound going behind me, it's actually because one of our neighbors in a tented area is having the same bird issue we do. So their goal is to do kind of like a Birds of Prey soundtrack. Sounds like a horror film. Anyway, if you hear that noise, that's what that is. But what I'm up to here is, before Matt and I can come through with our fiberglass from Griffco, I am going to create kind of like a cove or a ramp, because right now there's a very sharp area and we want it to be a smooth transition, so that when the fiberglass goes over, it has like a nice ramp and it doesn't bend in. It just kind of like bends smoothly from one side to the other. So I'm going to get that done with my thickened resin, and then we'll go back over it with the fiberglass.
Do you need to thicken it?
No, it actually like works pretty well because it like lets me move it around more. It's like not so stuck in its place. pretty nice if I do say so myself, and you'll have to excuse the big fan going in the background. It's getting pretty warm in here, a little stuffy and hard to work. And you can see Matt behind me just kind of like filling in those doors a little bit more of some of my extra. But what I did on this side versus port where I first started is I went a little bit lighter on the filler. So not as much cotton flock, not as much silica, and luckily it wasn't drippy, but it was still like viscous enough that it would let me, it was fluid enough to move around and let me get a smooth edge. So now I guess we just wait for it to get tacky, and then we'll go over both sides with that, with the top strand backed fiberglass.
The process we went through to add the 1208 fiberglass has been very similar to the way we've done our previous glassing. As usual, we would wet down the surface where we plan to add our cloth. But because this 1208 has a chopped strand matting on the back, it is best to cover that side in resin first instead of applying the cloth dry. We went over with a layer on our wetting station and then rolled it up to bring it to the area where it would be applied. The first section we added had a width of 150 millimeters, and Matt used a scraper to flatten it out across the seam, as well as try push out any air bubbles. Then he hit it with a fin roller, which basically does the same thing. Once the first section of 150 millimeter wide fiberglass was on, we went over the area one more time with a second layer, slightly narrower at 100 millimeters. There is a bit more to this process, such as finishing off with peel ply, but we'll explain and show all of that much better when we do the same process to the bridge deck seam.
Matt has just gone through and put a layer of peel ply on top of the 2 layers of 1208 that we just adhered over that seam. So everything is looking really good there. All we have left to do on starboard hull here is to not fall over. Do the process over again right where the chamfered panel is. So it's getting late into the evening. We're gonna be here well past dinner, but that's okay. Because once this finishes, I'm gonna feel so good.
I would rather be with you, even if it means I'm through chasing glory, fame, and wealth. I would not be by myself.
It's now the morning after we've applied the backed top strand cloth to the areas that we had just sealed with methacrylate, and now we're going to go peel off the peel ply and see how everything looks.
Overall, it is a very strong joint here, and yeah, once we get especially when we get the bulkheads in that give it that extra support perpendicular to it, that will end up being bonded all the way across top and bottom. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very, very strong section of the hull. Stronger than probably this section because it is 2 overlapping solid pieces on a curve, which is already inherently strong. Then you add the methacrylate bond there, and then 2 more layers of glass on it. It's probably a hard point, actually.
Before I start this sentence, let me say I don't mind this at all. It's going to be really nice once we have floors in here, but it is quite interesting in the meantime walking through the webbing, and half the time I'm standing around and my feet look like this. I am bendable. If you've noticed through this segment, both Matt and I have been sporting our Griffco Products t-shirts, and that's because we want to give a huge shout out to our Michigan friend Michael, who owns Griffco, and where we've gotten our like 200 pounds rolls on rolls of 1208 fiberglass through where we just completed this project. And a fun little backstory on Michael is he started Griffco about 4 years ago to kind of be like a father and son job, teaches kids about entrepreneurship. But anybody who's worked in fiberglass knows that it's not the most fun product to handle. The kids were kind of tired of being itchy all the time, and so they were just gonna let it go. Michael was about to close up shop, but just as he was running out of his supplies, business really started taking off, which is a good thing because now it is actually going to supply his dream of going cruising, which is something he's been dreaming about for a while. He's been following our videos among a few other channels, and it's been his dream just to kind of like get away from it all in a few years once his kids are out of school and just see the world by sailboat, which is so great. So we're really happy that we could support him, support local companies, someone who shares our dream. But what's really awesome for you is Michael is kind enough to put an offer out there for all of our viewers to get 10% off his products for the next 30 days. So we do have a link to his website in our description box below. And if you go to Griffco Products and put in the code 10MJSailing for the next 30 days, you'll get 10% off your order. So we want to say a big thanks to Michael for that, and make sure to go ahead and check that out. Hello there, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this shorter episode. That means this is a 2-episode week. There'll be another one coming out for you in 3 more days. And while you were watching that, I have just been enjoying this beautiful sunset from our flybridge on the Viking, looking out at the Chesapeake. So I like to spend my evenings up here just relaxing. And it is time for the weekly Q&A, and one of the big ones we got from this past episode was, or actually I should say last week's episode was answered in this week's episode if you watched. And that question was, since you had bonded together the inner hull pieces with the methacrylate bonding agent, were you going to go through and glass the interior? Which, yes, you did just see us do, and of course we're going to go into that in more detail when we go through and do the process again for the bridge deck, because it's easier to work around there, more space. You can kind of see both Matt and I working at that. The other question we have been receiving a lot through the videos and through our social media is, when do you plan to get the second container to come in? And we're getting to the phase where we could be ready for it. Mostly we had just been waiting due to shipping cost. As you know, the initial quote we got back in like the fall, October, November, when we were hoping to get it sent out, was around $3,500 to our door here at the marina. There's a fly in my face. And since then, shipping costs have only gone up. So when the first container left to Vietnam in, I think it was like late December, that cost had already gone up to $7,500 just to get it to New York Harbor. We still had to have it trucked here to the marina, which is an extra $1,500 expense. And so we were thinking that once everything was starting to pick up again, you know, ports could get more workers in there, the cost would go down. Other people were saying, no, costs are only going to go up, so make sure to get that done as soon as possible. And it turns out costs are still going up. We got a quote about a month ago for, I think, $11,500. Hi, Georgie. To get it to Baltimore, which is a little bit closer, but we'd still have to get it to the marina here. And so we said, you know, we've got bulkheads, we've got webbing, we can wait a little bit, and thought we'd give it another month. Now we just got another quote to Baltimore, $13,500. So I think we're gonna have to bite the bullet and just get it now before it goes up to like $15,000. But because costs are so much more than we originally expected, you can probably expect to see some paid promotions coming up in our videos. That's just gonna help cover things with costs like that. So yes, near the beginning of July, I think then the next container should be here. So we're gonna have like the cockpit, the deck, the cabin top, all of that fun stuff. And I think that portion is gonna go together pretty quickly as well too. So definitely hang around for when that part happens. And thank you so much for watching. And people are also asking, what's happening with Georgie? She just hangs out on the boat all day. Gets taken for walks at night.
Give me your freedom. Whoa, yeah. Japan